Hey guys, I'm Morgan, and back in 2009, I got a 50 in English. For the record, I'm no literary genius. I still can't stand Shakespeare, and when I was in year 12, I was perpetually confused by the task of language analysis. But these things didn't stop me from succeeding, and they won't stop you either. This is just a quick video to give you my top tips on how to do well in English. Obviously, this advice won't work for everyone. I'm just letting you know what worked for me. So here we go, a couple tips. Firstly, know the game. It's often said that VCE is a game, and you just have to work out the rules in order to succeed. So let me help you with some of those rules for English. There were people in my class who wrote 5 times as many essays as I did, and read the books a bunch of times, but they didn't do as well as me in the end. The reason was they didn't quite get it. VCE is not testing who is the best English student. They are testing who is the best English student in 3 hours and 15 minutes. What I mean by this is that knowing who said what to who on page 64 is not a skill you are ever going to be tested on. Instead, very specific skills are being tested, and you need to spend your time perfecting those instead. Side note and full disclosure, I read all my books twice, once to get the big ideas and a second time to highlight, take notes, pull out the little details. All right, on to our second tip. Know the individual task. Something that often trips up really good English students is not realizing how different the 3 sections of the exam are. Too many context pieces are written like text response essays without any creativity or engagement with the big ideas of the prompt. On the other hand, too many text response essays are written with lengthy analysis of the time period the author lived in and how they came to write this book. Specifically things that you are not supposed to talk about. Make sure you have a solid grasp of each of these things. Your starting point could be to visit the section pages on this wiki, where you will find videos giving you a general overview of each of the tasks of language analysis, context, and text response. Third, use the right language. There are several components to this tip, and each I'll say in turn. But really it's my way of saying that you should write an essay that suits the task. You should work aggressively at expanding your vocab to incorporate new words appropriate to each task. This doesn't mean clicking synonyms on every word in every essay. This means writing down the words your teacher says that you're not familiar with, or learning alternatives to words that you use too frequently. Another component of this advice is learning how to be formal. This means not referring to yourself in a text response or language analysis essay, and replacing words that reduce the fluency and formality of what is otherwise an appropriate essay. In short, don't say I unless it's a context piece, and don't write words that sound like you're just chatting with a friend, rather than writing an essay in an exam. Another little component of this point is learning the correct way of addressing the author and text. That means you need to underline the text name and use the author's surname after you've given their full name once. This sounds like a really minor point, but given that both of those things are going to come up in your intro, if you fail to do it, you've gotten off on a really bad foot with the assessor. On to our fourth tip, learn how to quote. Straight up, assessors are not interested in your ability to memorize huge swaths of dialogue from your text. Repeating this in an exam will not help your marks significantly. You must analyze everything you put down, which means choosing good, relevant quotes, not choosing really long, unwieldy quotes. And then you need to learn how to fit that into the sentence. Specifically, try sitting down with your teacher or tutor and learn how to weave quotes in or how to use semicolons, as those are the 2 easiest grammatically correct ways to include quotes. My 5th tip today is smart study over hard study. Before, I mentioned that there were people in my class who did a lot more work than I did, specifically that they wrote more essays than I did. Seems weird that they didn't do as well, right? I believe that this is fundamentally because they were doing hard study, not smart study. What I mean is this. Those people would choose to write an essay, hand it in to the teacher, get a mark, with some feedback on it. Maybe they'd skim it over, and then they'd never look at that essay again. They would then repeat this process all over and see only maybe a minor change in their mark. I approached essays differently. I would write an essay, hand it in, and then wait for feedback. Once that feedback came, I would sit down with the essay again, work in that feedback, and hand it back in. I'd keep repeating this a few times until the essay was full marks. This is smart study, And I learned so much doing it because I was able to recognize what I was doing wrong the first time and what an essay needed to look like to be full marks. It made me realize my weakness was making broad general statements rather than close analysis when put under time pressure, which was a habit I had to train myself out of for the exam. Try this for yourself. Pull out your last SAC and rewrite that essay using your teacher's feedback. I promise you the mark will improve, and you'll understand a lot more of your teacher's critiques. Our sixth tip today is stand out from the crowd. Assessors read a lot of essays in a short amount of time. You need to find a way to make yours jump off the page at them. This is different for each section of the exam. Like in text response, consider the wording of your first sentence carefully, as almost all of those essays start exactly the same way. Instead, show the assessor straight out of the gate that you write more fluidly and thoughtfully than other students. Then there's language analysis, which, unlike the other two sections, is the same for every student in Victoria, and therefore very repetitive for the assessors. Make it stand out to them by covering the things that other students don't. Of course, you still need to talk about the obvious stuff, like inclusive language and statistics and rhetorical questions. But on top of that, go for the less recognized techniques, like appeals and things that resonate with particular audiences. Make sure your visual analysis is on point, as this is often something that separates between good and great students. Furthermore, cover everything on the page. Don't ignore any one paragraph or image. Show the assessor instead that you've considered how all of those things interact and what the big picture is. Practicing these things can really set you apart in the exam. My seventh tip is utilize reading time. This is my last tip today, and it's something I hope you take into the exam with you. A lot of people waste the 15 minutes that is their reading time, but it can be a game changer if you use it right. Practice it and plan in advance exactly how you will tackle the exam. This is how I used my reading time. 3 to 4 minutes for text response, 1 to 2 minutes for context, and about 10 minutes was left over for language analysis after that. Doing it this way means you have time to choose what question you will be answering for text response, and in your head drawing out a basic plan. Then, all you need to do for context is kind of get an idea of what the question's about, as there's no choice to be made there. Finally, having 10 minutes for language analysis allowed me to read everything twice, which is really good for getting that close analysis the assessors want. This meant that when writing time started, I would jump straight into the language analysis before the other two sections, given that it was so fresh in my mind. On that note, don't forget to read the background information for language analysis, as it often holds hints for who the audience is or likely definitions you might require, and similar questions you'll need to cover off in your essay. All right, that's all from me for now, but I hope these tips help. English is a huge subject, but you can make it workable by breaking it up for yourself. I actually kept 3 different folders for the 3 different sections of English. That was really good for helping me keep it clear in my mind when I just wanted to focus on one section. Make sure to check out all of the videos and notes on the wiki for English. There are general videos for each section, but also a lot of specific videos on different language analysis techniques and the different texts studied under each context. Watching or reading that material can be a game changer for your analysis. Good luck for the rest of the year.